Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing another episode. This will be part 73 of our Jurassic World Evolution 2 mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to and compare them to their real life fossil counterparts. So today we've got about a little bit less than them. We've got 8 animals, but considering we have a couple extra species added in and like extra variants to talk about, I think it'll be good that we split it into 8 this time. But yeah, we've got quite an interesting assortment. And we got a couple new models on the scene, or at least, yeah, two. We got 2 new models on the scene, so that's always going to be cool. So we're starting off with one of them. We've got a really cool little guy. This is done by Chocolate, which I love chocolate. So not the modder, but the actual chocolate, the actual food item. But yeah, really excited to get stuck into this one. So this one is big, so excited to talk about big. So here's the little guy, he is big, real little cutie. So you can find a good one in the light there. Ooh. I'll have a look at you, you look quite pretty standing there. Let's have a look at you. There we are, big. So big is very interesting. So it's a genus of Neoceratopsians, so it's kind of like one of the first ones, like a Quillops. So it's from the early Cretaceous of Mongolia and contains the single species Big Tsitsi, if you say that, which is known from a partial skull and very fragmentary postcrania, and is actually represents the most basal known Neoceratopsian known. And the holotype was discovered in 2015 near Tuzgot Ovo in the Ovamani province of Mongolia, and it belongs to the Ulanush Formation, which dates back to about 113 to 94 million years ago at the boundary between the lower and upper Cretaceous. So it gets its name from Beg Titsi, which is a Himalayan deity, which is like the god of war of Mongolian culture. So kind of like the Ares of, or if you want to be like a gamer, Kratos of the Mongolian culture. And the deity is often depicted with quite a rugose face, or quite a nobly, rough face and body. So that can often mean that's why they got the name, because it's kind of a similar appearance to the animal in the skull. So based on the size of the skull, it's about 114 millimeters, or about 5 inches long. It's likely medium size, not too big, not that big. Similar in size to things like Yinlong and Neoceratops. But they actually show a lot of transitional features between more basal ceratopsians like Psittacosaurus, but more Neoceratopsians, so later ones, including like Styracosaurus, Chasmosaurus, and Triceratops. So it's kind of like an in-between. It's starting to get a little bit more features to look more like the Triceratops and all those big ceratopsians we all know and love. So other fossil materials that do have it include like a rib, a partial left scapula, partial right ischium, and many bone fragments that actually cannot be identified. And as I mentioned, it's known from the Ulanush Formation in southern Mongolia, with been found with things like dinosaur eggs, sauropods, and turtles that are also known from this formation, but I don't think a lot of them are named, so it's a very interesting little formation that tells us a little bit about these guys. So yeah, really cool. So Chocolate, wonderful job with this little guy. Definitely love the little Bexy. Look at him go, a little cutie. You know, love these guys. So let them run off and do their thing. Get out of there. You just don't want them near the hatchery. So next up, we've got we always know and love Hockowl1215. So Hockowl1215 actually did a Plateosaurus and included the 3 of the main species known. There was originally 4 known, but sometimes some are considered Nomadoubi and things like that. But we're going to be talking about all these different species. Since I've already covered Plateosaurus when Master Dude made his pack, I'm going to be covering them kind of as their own thing, different species. So let's have a look at these guys. So Plateosaurus has had a bit of a interesting taxonomic history. So the one that we're going to be starting with here is Gracilis. So this is kind of the smallest-ish one, though there's a lot of specimens and things that could be really confusing. So what is actually P. gracilis is actually may be considered a metataxon, which means there's neither existence, the material assigned to it is monophyletic, or nor is it paraphyletic or belong to several species. So there's been also considered the holotype of another species called Celosaurus gracilis, but has no skull, and that overlaps a lot. But the three other species, all named species except the type species, P. gracilis, tended to be junior synonyms. So typically it's those three species that are often considered, often the right ones. So the taxonomy is like, a little bit all over the place, but yeah, really, really cool. But I'll talk a little bit about their etymology. So the type specimen for gracilis is an incomplete proscranium, and it's kept in the Stalisch Museum, the National Schoolgarten in Germany, and his type locality is Hauslasch, which was the kind of first place in Germany. So it wasn't the first one known, it's not the type species. Type species is the last one I'll be talking about, Troningatus, which is typically that one. So that's the type species. So typically about 3 of them are considered. There were lots of different species assigned to it, but now they've kind of been lumped together. So as I mentioned, we're going to talk a little bit about the taxonomy there. So these guys are a group that were originally known as prosauropods, a group that's not monophyletic, but most researchers prefer using the term basal sauropodomorph, so early relatives of later sauropods, and was the first kind of prosauropod to be described. It's kind of this missing link, between sauropods, the big sauropods, and their smaller early ancestors, but still really, really cool. And they're actually the member of their own group. There's Dinosaurs, which I've already covered, which is a Platesaurid, believed to be. Was at least, now it's in the Dinosauridae. But there's Plateosaurus and other relatives like that. So Stelosaurus is believed to be another one, Stelosaurus, which is really, really cool. But yeah, a lot of back and forth has been between whether Plateosaurus was plantigrade or quadrupedal or bipedal. But most recent evidence suggests that these guys were most definitely bipedal because they don't have a lot of adaptations for walking on their front legs, so they were just kind of getting big, but then their relatives kind of eventually got onto 4 legs to get even bigger. Then we get the sauropods that we know and love. And actually really do have some really cool adaptations for moving around, so they were very well adapted for walking long distances in open areas, so they would have been very able to move large distances in their habitat, which is quite cool. And all these guys, as I mentioned, would all be found... Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Be found around Europe, so they believe most of them are found around Germany, and also some bits other in Europe as well. So yeah, really, really cool guy. Switzerland, another cool one. So let's let these guys go. So that's gracilis. That's our first species. You can see, really, really cool. Definitely a big fan. Let them walk off. Hockel always does an awesome job, so you can see how awesome this guy's come out. So let's have a look at the next one. So next one is Longiceps. So this is Plateosaurus Longiceps. Is this a helicopter? It's because the park's open. Turn that off. Close by. Anyway, let's carry on. So this is Longiceps. So you can see again, we're getting slightly bigger with these ones as well. Hockel loves to do separate species, but a lot of these are a little bit controversial. Anyway, but this first one, as you can see here, this is another good one. So this one was found in, this is Longiceps, which is stored in the museum, the Nachrichter in Berlin. The type locality is Hallstatt, which is located in the Togen Formation, which is quite interesting. So that's another one of the other species that I've considered to be synonyms. So there were lots and lots and lots of different species of Plateosaurus described, and now they've been dwindled down into different genera, or just lumped into other species, and we've kind of dwindled it down to these 3 species, which is Gracilis, Longiceps, and Trolingasis, we'll get into. So body is definitely, as I mentioned, not too different. And this is not the type species. Last species we talked about is the type species, and consider them one of the largest. So there's a lot of variation. So typical size for this species, Gracilis, is kind of one of in the middle, so about 5 to 6 meters long. Prognathus is believed to get quite a bit bigger. Trolingasis, if you say that. So we'll use this opportunity to talk about different ones. So in terms of the diet, these guys would have likely been very similar. They would have had very interesting teeth that were similar to a lot of herbivorous reptiles and carnivorous ones, so very similar to things like iguanas, because they were making that transition to becoming more plant eaters. And there has been no fossils of Plateosaurus found with gastroliths, but it's widely accepted that a lot of large dinosaurs have swallowed them, like crocodiles and birds today, to use them to help digest. We just haven't found kind of the evidence for that. But these guys have also been quite central in the debate of dinosaur metabolism. So similar to non-avian dinosaurs, there's been patterns. They grew in a pattern that's really weird, unlike a lot of other extant mammals or birds. So they have their own kind of dinosaur. Like very much like other sauropods, they kind of growth. They grew very rapidly, and then they grew grew a little bit slower through sexual maturity, but then was determinate, and they stopped growing at a maximum size. So mammals typically will grow rapidly, but sexual maturity falls typically at the end of that rapid growth phase. And in both groups, the final size is relatively constant, with humans atypically variable. So these reptiles kind of show a sauropod-like pattern. They'll initially grow really fast, slow at sexual maturity, but then almost but not fully stop growing at adult age, or at old age. They will grow a little bit. So these guys seem to very much grow very similar to, of course, those in that way, later sauropods. And this has been like brought up questions about their metabolism and how fast they grew, and if they were warm-blooded, cold-blooded, how much energy they used. So they got quite fast. So some individuals have actually been found of Plateosaurus to grow from like fully grown at like 4 meters long, so about 16 feet, 4.8 meters, and others reach 10 meters long at their adult age, so they're quite big. And they actually, looking at the microsculpture of the bone and everything, so they were variable growth, kind of like crocodiles, but they did have evidence of endothermy, so very much produced their own body heat to be able to regulate their metabolism. And that's very interesting. So some histology looking into the ages, there's some individuals were fully grown at 12, others kept growing till 20, others were still growing rapidly at 18. So it's really interesting how these guys just didn't have a set growth rate. It was very variable. So some of the largest individuals are the later species. I believe the Trogonatus is the largest species we know of. They get up to about 10 meters, and there's just so much variation between them, which is really, really interesting. So yeah, we're going to keep going with that one. So let's have a look at our last one. So let's let them run out. So this is the last species, the largest, to keep the best for last. So Trogonatus, I believe you say that. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Trogonatus. Oh, well, I can't even say it properly. So I'm going to commit to the pronunciation. Trossingenius, I believe you say that, Trossingenius. I'm going to commit to that one. But here's the nice guy here. So this is the biggest. So this is considered the type species. So this is the species that basically is based on. So this is the one kind of first found. There's a few localities as well. But this is considered the type specimen. So this was the first one found in like 1834. They were found by Friedrich Ehrhart as well. It's kind of one of the older species that got lumped into this one. Material has been assigned across Germany as well, like the 1930s, things like that. Really, really interesting. So the type specimen for this guy was actually stored in the same museum as pre-Gracilis, and type locality is Trossingen within the Trossingen Formation, so not too different. That they could end up being lumped, things like that. Taxonomy being taxonomy. Yeah, this is one of the biggest ones. These had the biggest individuals. So the ranges I mentioned, the size is like 4.8 to 10 meters long. So this is the species that contains the 10-meter long, really big individuals. And I think potentially in the future, a lot of these species could be further lumped because a lot of them are actually, as I mentioned, just different sizes. There's a lot of them are based on, so they've been lumped. Some may even be more lumped. It's taxonomy being taxonomy. It'll change once we learn more. But yeah, really, really cool. It's also a bit subjective. Still cool though. So all these species, found in Europe from the kind of later Jurassic, I mean. So found between 227 to 208 million years ago. And there isn't too much animals they lived with. They lived with a lot of other smaller dinosaurs, like Linnaeus centus, I believe so then. Some smaller theropods, potentially lots of small tendon spondylus. I say small, but potentially like a meter or so long. prosauropod, things like that. It's not really known with much, but looking at other related ecologies, there's eventually Dicynodonts, Rarasuchians, some larger dinosaurs got on there too, so it's a little bit of variety, a little bit of everything. And very interesting as well, there's a lot of research looking into the Uthati, which is, I believe, lumped into this guy. There's been interpretations of these kind of large miring and mud that allow the preservation of single complete specimen that is known. So there's been interpretations how the specimen died, potentially through like being mired in a swamp or being very much like in a flood. Weakest animals getting put in like that. But there's been all sorts of different I can't even speak now. Trains of thought, so very in interesting ways, many ways it could have almost fallen. It could have been very similar, It may have came to this place and got trapped, very similar to like the tar pits, drinking water, or they just, once they reach a certain body weight, they just sunk into the mud, so it's a way they could have been preserved. But the juveniles were light, but the adults kind of were sinking in, so the babies could get away, but the adults couldn't because they were too heavy. And then similar, there's been scavenging theropods are not trapped due to their lower body weights and their proportionally larger feet. So basically, they walked along, the adults sunk, and then the babies run away, and then the carnivores or the smaller theropods are able to come and scavenge. So it's a little bit sad. But yeah, at least it allows us to have these wonderful looks into these animals and have the preserved skeletons. So we can, count our blessings. So yeah, really nice to have all the different species. So you can see that's Gracilis, Alongiceps, and then Trollongenius, which is this one. There's a big boy, a big 10-meter long one. Really, really cool. Really, really awesome. So that's by Hoccal1215. If you hear noises, it's just my roommate. Anyway, so next up, we've got another mod by Chocolate. We've got some more sauropods, because everyone loves sauropods. Love these guys. We've got Brachytrachelopan. So here is the guy. It's him. So let's have a look at you. We'll have a look at you. So this is Brachytrachelopan. So Brachytrachelopan is a short-necked sauropod from the late Jurassic, about Oxford and Tenthonian of Argentina. So I actually got to see a good fossil of this guy at Te Papa Museum, where they had the dinosaurs of Patagonia there. I think it's still there, or might have just left. But anyway, so the holotype is an only known specimen. Was collected in kind of flugel sandstone in the Caldon Caldera Formation, which is a hill approximately 25 kilometers northeast of the Sericota Chubut province in west central Argentina in South America. So what really sets this guy apart, as you can kind of see here, is it's got a very, very short neck. So it's actually 40% shorter than other Dicraeosaurus, and actually the shortest known of any sauropods. So it's got a short neck on top of being in a group of short-necked sauropods, which is really interesting. So it's believed these guys actually specially evolved the short neck to fill a niche that other sauropods couldn't fill, or there are other animals that they weren't filling that niche, so they kind of evolved, get to that size for whatever reason. Small for a sauropod as well. They only got to about 10 to 11 meters long and about 5 tons in body mass, so about the same size as an elephant. And also noted the high degree of fusion between the nerval arches and the centra, which is quite interesting. And it shows that these guys were not juveniles, so they didn't get much bigger. This was an adult animal that they found. And hence the small body size was not because it was a young animal, it was because it was an adult. It was an adult and it grew to be that big, which is quite interesting. So as I mentioned, these guys are a sauropod and they member the Diplodocidae, so they're related to things like Diplodocus and things like that, and Rapetosaurus. But in the terms of their family, they're Dicraeosauridae, so they're related to animals like Margosaurus and Dicraeosaurus, so very, very interesting animals. So in terms of the ecology, as I mentioned, it's got a short neck. These shorter-necked Dicraeosaurids may have had a different ecology from a lot of other sauropods, maybe taking a niche very similar to like the Stegosaurs and other smaller herbivores of its time, and which is very interesting. So it likely would have been well adapted for feeding on plants about 1 to 2 meters off the ground, so well adapted for grazing. So they would have had the same kind of niche ecologically as kind of low-browsing iguanodontians and stegosaurs, which is quite interesting, and that's probably why they got smaller as well. And because a lot of things like iguanodonts and things were kind of missing in South American ecosystems at the time, they probably kind of took that niche to be able to exploit it. And it's what's called parallel evolution. So they were able to take the same niches, even though they lived in different areas. So these smaller sauropods took the niche of the iguanodontians in South America, but other places these iguanodontians kind of took the niche and kind of were the mid-sized herbivores. So animals, they always like to adapt to fill the niche to help them survive. So many animals around the world take the same niche. Like look at kiwis and badgers, very similar generally. Many animals over the world, because just limits of geography, they'll take niches that are taken up by other animals across the world, and this is a case of that in prehistory, so that's quite cool. So let's run them off. So let's have a look. Let's them run off and do their thing. So next up, we've got another really cool one, also done by Chocolate. We've got another sauropod. We've got Rapetosaurus. There we are, the man himself. Oh, and we don't want that. I'll have a look at you because I like the colors on this guy. So this is Rapetosaurus. Very, very interesting animal. So Rapetosaurus is a Titanosaurian sauropod, so we moved quite a bit. It's from the late Cretaceous and lived right up to the end of the Cretaceous compared to Brachytrachelopan, which is only from the Jurassic. So these guys lived in Madagascar from about 70 to 66 million years ago, and would have gone extinct with the rest of the dinosaurs like T-Rex and all that, or the rest of the non-avian ones. And the only one species is identified, Rapetosaurus karinsky, which is quite cool. So these guys are typically quite typical for a sauropod. They've got a slender tail, very long neck, and huge elephant-like body. They've a head very similar to Diplodocid, but they're not related to Diplodocus. They're more related to things to Titanosaurs. It's quite interesting. And they had pencil-shaped teeth, good for taking off leaves, very similar to the sauropods. They're actually also fairly modest in size for a sauropod. The juvenile specimen that we know is about 8 meters from head to tail, and probably weighed as much as an elephant, though an adult specimen has been found, and even that would have been that much bigger at about 15 meters, or about 49 feet in length, which is still less than half the length of an animal such as like Paralititan or Argentinosaurus, which they would have been related to. And estimated sizes have been seen for a possible adult, probably based on a female, it was about 16.5 meters long and about 10 tons, so not much bigger than an elephant or comparable in size to large adult bull elephants today. So not too different. But remember, these guys lived on Madagascar, which is an island. Even back in the Cretaceous, it was an island. So there could be a very interesting case of insular dwarfism. So in terms of its discovery, it was known from a single specimen, which was actually the first time a titanosaur had been recovered in almost perfect intact skeleton, complete with the skull, which is quite interesting. So it was first discovered in 2001 by Christina Curry Rogers and Catherine A. Foster, and published back then. And then the nearly complete skeleton was that of a juvenile, and then 3 partial remains of other individuals had been recovered. So the dig and there's a partial skull, the juvenile specimen only missed a few tail vertebrae, so it's pretty much complete, which is very interesting. And the fossil remains were actually found in the Mahajanga Formation in northwestern Madagascar, not far from the port city of Mahajanga, and they come from the Marivo Formation, which dates back to the Maastrichtian stage of the late Cretaceous. It's about between 70 and 66 million years old, which is quite interesting, and was first extracted in 1993. from the site, and then it was published in 2001. So if you've seen Prehistoric Planet, it covers some of the marine formation. Rapetosaurus was in the show, along with animals that lived with, like Brachytrachelopan, Majungasaurus, Smilodonticus, Aditherium. Animals like that are all found in Madagascar at the time. So the generic name Rapetosaurus comes from Rapeto, which is actually a giant deity in Malagasy folklore, credited for like how they how mountains came to be, made a lot of the geological features of the island. And Sauros, which of course means lizard. But the science or the species name, Karinsky, was named after the team leader of the expedition, David W. Krause. Some people say that, Karinsky. Very interesting as well. So we do know a little bit about their growth. So the rare specimen of the juvenile, as I mentioned, was found. The specimen was estimated to weigh about 40 kilograms or 88 pounds and was between 38 and 77 days old. So no more than a few months old at maximum. At this time of hatching, the juvenile was actually estimated to be about 3.4 kilograms, which is quite interesting. And so based on bone remodeling, the juvenile sauropods were actually believed to be capable of surviving with little parental care. That seems to be quite common out of the sauropods. They would have just been ready to go right out the box, pretty much. Analysis of actually the bones suggests that the dinosaur actually died of starvation, which is a little bit sad. It is most likely due to be because of the hard droughts that Madagascar faced during the Cretaceous. See, it tells you how much they grow, which is really interesting. So during the Maastrichtian, what was Madagascar, it actually had just separated from India about 20 million years earlier and was still drifting towards Africa. So a lot of its animals are not that closely related to animals from Africa. It's actually a lot more Gondwanian animals, things like from India and Antarctica, things like that. So very interesting. And sea levels were also rising as well and continue to do so into the Paleogene. So these guys would have roamed a lot of plats and things like that, and there's neighboring formations that would have been marine. So these guys would have lived on islands, and with like strong dry seasons and wet seasons, almost very monsoonal. So because besides these guys, there's been lots of different species found, such as Majungasaurus, Rahanavis, lots of different species of mammals, frogs, including Beelzebufo, lizard snakes, and things like that, and lots of cool, like, prehistoric mammals, like Antilotherium and Ventania, which is quite cool. And the skull of Majungasaurus is similar to species found in India and Argentina, so it suggests that these guys would have likely been able to move around the late Cretaceous, and then kind of split off and became their own thing. So it's quite cool. And typically, Titanosaurs are actually unusual amongst sauropods, is that they coexisted with large ornithischian dinosaurs. But these guys wouldn't have lived with any of these guys. They would have been the only large herbivore in Madagascar, it seems, with smaller herbivores being very rare, things like Samasuchus. So these guys probably had the run of the ecosystem, a little bit more common. So they kind of had a different dynamic than a lot of other places during the Cretaceous because they didn't have to only had sauropods to deal with the plants. And a lot of animals only had sauropods to eat, rather than having a lot of the ankylosaurs and cetopsians and hadrosaurs and things like that. So they're quite atypical in the ecosystem, which is quite interesting. But yeah, really, really cool. Another great chocolate mod. So definitely going to let you run off and do your thing. So this one has come from a very sporadic modder, but it's not too much happening in there. It's from definitely not Dilophosaurus, or like a craft boy, whatever you call them. So this is only a really small mod, so I'll just talk about some of the changes to the wing there. So this is the Velociraptor or Utahraptor wing edit. So as I mentioned, this is pretty much what it is on the tin. This only just edits the arms of the dinosaurs. We'll have a look at the wings. So you can see this is changes a lot here. So you can see how bird feathers actually work on these guys. So I think that's actually turn a little bit. Oh no, it's turning. Of course it do that. Okay, that's better. Let's have a look. We'll have a look at you because you're the nicest color. So let's have a look. So you can see the kind of primaries and things have all been added down here because they come down on the second finger. So if you look at a bird wing, if you take a chicken, dissect it and all that, forgive me for all the sounds. You'll actually take it. The second finger is the one that's got the feather anchors on it. The birds today have pretty much only got that finger left, and a little bit of the third. A couple of fingers left. A lot of it is kind of in like a big mitten where it supports the feathers of the wing. So you can see it goes down to the second finger. You've got the coverts there. You've got the primaries as well. See, it's pretty much just made the wings a lot more correct. This is very much like what dinosaur wings would actually look like, not the ones where they just come up to their wrists. So this is very much what a proper, and this is based on evidence of modern birds, but also preserved fossils of prehistoric dinosaurs. So this is kind of what we know, like things like Archaeornis, things like that. We know they had these very bird-like kind of arrangements with their wing feathers, and they probably didn't use them to fly. Of course, these guys were, probably about quarter of a ton to half a ton, so they probably weren't flying, but they could have used them to break their falls for display, using to spook prey. There's actually a study that looked into like dinosaurs using them to scare insects, but I could definitely see them using them to just like startle things. But it just makes the surface area bigger. But yeah, really, really cool. So you can see the proper finger on there, or the coverts primaries, and yeah, it looks perfect. Nice to see some nice wings. I think it also was on, I don't know if he's actually done it with the one that Wheat did, but if Wheat just ported this on, that would cover the perfect wings. So yeah, awesome. Definitely big fan. So nice to see some little edits just to make them a little bit more accurate. So we all know and love these guys. So I'm going to let them run off and do their thing. So next up, we've got Vallibonavenatrix. So another really cool little Spinosaur that we get to talk about. I'm definitely excited. Love a good you look nice and pretty. So Vallibonavenatrix, which means Venabanita Hunter, it's actually named after the town it was found in. These guys are a genus of Spinosaurid from the early Cretaceous Acrelis de Molina Formation in Spain, and the type and only specimen known, or species known, is Vallibonatrix carni, which is known for a partial skeleton. So during the late 1980s and early 90s, it was kind of found by amateur fossil collector Juan Carnafona during locales in the El Portas National Park, where they found a bunch of vertebrae from this guy. Then in 2007, Spanish paleontologist Fernando Gomez Melendez actually published a provisional description of the pelvis of this theropod, and actually described it. And then after that, all that time, after 2007, but then in 2019, they actually, Esteban Mafina, if you say that, and colleagues actually published the full description and named it as a new genus of Spinosaurid, Vallibonatrix carni, with the partial skeleton as the holotype. And the generic name runs through the towns of Vallibonita, and Ventrix means huntress, so it's the huntress of Vallibonita. And its specific name honors as well Carnifona, who's actually discovered it, and is actually one of the most complete Spinosaurid specimens recovered from Iberian Peninsula. But there's actually quite a few other species of Iberian Spinosaurs, which is quite interesting. There's Rehovaldatrix, Iberispinus, Camelosaurus, and Protethus, which is quite interesting. These guys were moderately sized, they were bipedal as well, and they had the upright neural spines, moderately tall, it's only known as trapezoid. Similar for morphology, things like Ichthyovenator, and there would have been a small snail on its back, but probably not too extreme compared to things like that. Very similar to things like Irritator. So in 2019, when it was described, it's actually within this family Spinosauridae, so it is related to Spinosaurus, and is also believed to have been though it's closer in proximity to the Baryonychines. These guys were found more closely related to the African and Gondwanian Spinosaurus, an irritator that came from South America and Africa, but also the Asian genus Ichthyovenator. So even though it's closer to like Baryonyx and most European genera, these guys are more closely related morphologically to things like Spinosaurus and stuff from Asia and also Africa and South America. So that shows interesting. It's kind of believed because we have all these different species, Europe could have been a hub for Spinosaurus diversity. So it's very interesting. It's actually believed to be closer relative Spinosaurus. However, though, in 2021, there has been some arguments. They've actually found these guys are actually the most basal, that are outside of both Baryonychine and Spinosaurine, and could have been their own basal group of guys like that. However, there's been other studies looking back, and they did not find it was a Spinosaurine. and show that these guys may have had an affinity with that group rather than Baryonychines. So maybe not a Spinosaurine, but basal enough, or just more closely related to Spinosaurines, like an outlier of that group. So it's quite interesting. So these guys were found in the Acrosimella Formation, which dates to the Babian stage of the early Cretaceous, between about 129 to 125 million years ago, and coexisted with a lot of other dinosaurs like Iguanodon, Orelodon, some sauropods, and also, as I mentioned, a fellow Spinosaurus, Protognathus, which is quite cool, really, really cool. Nice to see these guys. And because it's a Spinosaur, we love swimming Spinosaurs, they also get an aquatic version. And that also leads us into the final two animals, of course. So let's have a look at the swimming one. Quite interesting to actually see like a Spinosaurus swimming in the game. Looks very interesting. Very, very weird, but still kind of cool. Nice to see these guys, getting some aquatic love. And I always love more lagoon animals. I think the lagoons definitely need some love. Actually doesn't look too bad. Just swims like a crocodile, See how the legs kind of splay out. Don't really nowhere near as well adapted as things like Spinosaurus, but could make sense during their ecology. But we are moving on. So this next one was the Vallibonavenatrix was done by Huskwok Tree. He does all sorts of really wonderful mods. The next one was done by a new modder, David, who made the Tenontosaurus, which I'm really excited to get stuck into. So have a look at these guys. Let them swim off and do their thing. Let's see if you can find one. Ooh, I like you. Yeah, we're gonna go with you. Got a nice design on you. So this is Tenontosaurus, which means cutting-toothed lizard in Latin. These guys are an extinct genus of ichthyosaur that come from the early Jurassic, so lived between 200 and 175 million years ago from the indigenous terrain of what is known as Western Europe, so places like England, France, but also found in Chile, so very likely they had a wide distribution. So the first ichthyosaur ever skull was that actually found of Tenontosaurus plateodon, so that was the first one found of anyone, and was found in Lyme Regis by Joseph Anning in 1811, and the rest of the skeleton was discovered by his sister, Mary Anning, who we all know, but was later lost but never recovered, but we still found the skull and was described as T. plateodon, and is actually considered the most common species of Tenontosaurus, though that's one of those animals that has so many different species described to it, it's really hard to know different species, things like that. So this species was first described in Combe in 1822, and then there's been other species, described since. It's kind of hard to tell which is which, to be honest. But they all kind of range as sizes, but they're all mostly considered pretty large. The largest one known is the Rutland Sea Dragon, which is about 10 meters long, was discovered in 2021. Hasn't been given a name yet, but it might be added to, one of the other species. But yeah, these guys got quite big. So they were a large ichthyosaur. They measured about 8 to 10 meters long. Initial estimates for the specimen, they had a 1.5 meter skull, was like 9 to 12 meters, even 15 meters. Though these are believed to be overestimates, so most likely wouldn't have exceeded 6 to 7. Though, as I mentioned, these giant specimens, about 10 meters. So it's the largest ones we definitely do know about. So the forelimbs and hind limbs were often the same size, same length, and rather elongated, which is actually kind of weird for post-Jurassic ichthyosaurs. They typically have forelimbs at least twice as long. So these guys they also had high hyperphalangia, so they had lots of fins, but it was believed that their fins took much role in propulsion, so they would have swam very much like a fish or a whale did. But these guys would have used them to be able to kind of move around and stabilize themselves in the water. So they were very much, very well adapted for swimming quite fast, like dolphins, things like that. But also as well, these guys had high visual capacity, very similar to like other species of ichthyosaurs. So they had big eyes to be able to see a lot, very large cloak rings, even on T. Platodon is about at least 25 centimeters in diameter. And also what sets these guys apart, these guys had very big heads, so they had a long, robust snout that are elongovascular, and with these big teeth, as I mentioned, they've got really big teeth, cutting-edge teeth. The skull of the Platodon is about 1.5 meters, and some have shorter rostrums, so there would have been some variation within them. Some had shorter rostrums, some were bigger, probably adapted to eat different prey, but or could have been different genera, but yeah, you can see they're very different. Yeah, these guys would have pretty much been apex predators in the ecosystem, so would have eaten animals such as fish, plesiosaurs, and other smaller ichthyosaurs, things like cephalopods. So anything pretty much smaller than them, they would have been kind of larger feeders. And there's been some kind of speculation that different species fed on different things. So animals like Platodon would have preferred things like smaller, soft-bodied vertebrates, kind of very similar like sperm whales. Some have like Tiopocephalus, who actually ate larger food, like larger ichthyosaurs, plesiosaurs, bigger fish, and some, variation. And they most likely would have used ram feeding to be able to kind of ram into their prey, and then would have likely rapidly opened their jaws and kind of grabbed them and broke them apart, swallowed them whole, kind of thing. But in terms of their swimming and movement style, they were likely a fast cruiser, so they had highly flexible tails, and they would have swam very turgiforms, which was very unlike Mazel ichthyosaurs, which are more anguilliform. So they would have probably swam quite similar to like sharks and tuna today, so would have been able to swim quite fast. And in terms of their taxonomy, these guys are in their own family called Temnodontidae, which is in the group Neoichthyoreidae. So more closely related to, earlier groups like a rhinoceros, things like that. But they were on their own group. There would have been animals related to them. But some of them have been kind of put as different species or lumped and things like that. There's a lot of different species in this genus. I think they could potentially be lumped, but we obviously need more work to that. Could be lumped, could be split, whatever. It's just we need to figure out working in the weeds because there's a lot of species in this genus. So these guys likely would have lived in open ocean, like pelagic areas, and as I mentioned, there's been fossils found pretty much all around the world. Most of them come from England, but there are a few of them found in, also, as I mentioned, Chile, possibly Chile, so they could have been, global. And been found in England, and they would have been found on stones with like many annanites and belemnites and things like that. So very, very interesting. But yeah, really, really cool. I love Tenontosaurus, an animal I always love talking about. Really, really cool. Nice beginning to your mod career, David. Definitely did a good job. And I believe that's on the dunk as well, so it can use the shark feeder, which makes sense for Tenontosaurus. One of the animals featured in my, animals I want pack, because I think it's a very interesting ichthyosaur. But next up, we've got last but certainly not least, we've got Pliosaurus funkei by Hasrocktree, who always loves good mods. This one's really, really awesome. No, that's not what we wanted. Let you swim out. Let's look at this real pretty guy. Let's see if we can get him in a good light. I think that's probably the best look we're going to get. No, I reckon we can get better. There we are. See, look, we just needed to wait. Patience is key. Here's a good look at this guy. I love like the postures like that. But anyway, so Pliosaurus, which means more lizard. You can never have too much lizard, so you always need more. So these are extinct genus of Thalassopodon Phyllosaur? No, Pliosaur. I don't know why did I say that wrong? That's weird. These guys come from Europe and South America. So most of the species typically weigh about 8 meters long. Well, about 8 meters long, weigh about 5 tons. But this species here, P. funkei, which is also known as Predator X, would have been one of the largest plesiosaurs of all time. Got to about 10 meters or longer in length. So there's quite a few species, as I mentioned. There's been many species in the past. Recent reviews have said about 6, with 2 wanting to become more valid. But it's really following the weeds. There's 6 different species, could be split, could be lumped. It's very much a work in progress, actually trying to figure out the taxonomy of Pliosaurus. So we're just going to be talking about the species that has been, outlined here. So this is the one everyone knows and loves. It's the biggest one. It's P. funkei. So this guy is known from 2 partial skeletons that are found the Svalbard archipelago in Norway and housed in the University of Oslo Natural History Museum. found in the Arctic Svenborg Island, found Norwegian team. So quite interesting, and is believed to come from the Middle Thorian stage, about the late Jurassic, and was found with all sorts of really cool animals such as Columbosaurus, Dogena, which are Plesiosaurs, and the Ichthyosaurus, Cryptopterus, and Palaverna. But these guys were first described and named by Espen M. Kooten, Patrick S. Dagler member, and John H. Hoonen in 2012. And the specific name honors Bjorn Fuchs, who actually discovered it, and his wife, Berile Hassenkut, for volunteering in the paleontology collections at the museum. So just to honor them, we love that. So the holotype is represented by the upper and lower jaws, with including the teeth, one nearly complete cervical centrum and two partial cervical centra, with all a bunch of different bits, around the body. So it's actually pretty well known. So, degrading the material. So most of them were kind of found in situ, and there's been lots of evidence of looking into the length, things like that. They were first discovered in 2007, lots of fragments, and they kind of degraded upon getting found. So one of those things. But estimates from the skull length, which is quite well known, is estimated to be between 1.6 to 2 meters, between 5 feet 2 to 2 foot 6 for the holotype, and even the larger one is about 2 to 2.5 meters, or about 6.6 to 8.2 feet long, which is in the larger specimen. That suggests a body length of about 10 to 12 meters, which makes Pliosaurus funkei one of the largest, if not the largest pliosaurs found so far. And due to its big size, everyone loves the big things, it got the nickname Predator X before it was described, and actually was featured on Planet Dinosaur for being big and ferocious animal to ever swim in the ocean. So very sensationalized, but very interesting as well. They believe these specimens were adults. They probably didn't get much bigger, so that's likely their adult size, even though they could have been above or under average. So described they were quite different, other species, obviously the size as well, but keels and things like that. There were lots of morphological differences that they believed to be found, and also stratigraphy to try and justify them as a different species. But analyses of the four flippers, so these animals would have used their four flippers to swim, very much like a sea turtle, and their brain was actually quite similar to that of today's great white shark, so very similar kind of ecology since they were top predators, which is interesting. But yeah, really, really cool. So in terms of their ecology, as we're going to talk about the ecology, their phylogeny, Pliosaurus at least are considered monophyletic, but there's probably a few different species in there. Funkei is considered one of the later ones, particularly quite big, as I mentioned. P. funkei was very big boy. But yeah, really, really cool. So these guys would have been the top predators of the ecosystem, hunting around for all sorts of different animals, smaller animals like Ichthyosaurs and Plesiosaurs, large fish, potentially squids and things like that. On that seafood diet, over there eating all the seafood, they'll eat it. Very generalist. But yeah, really, really cool. Love seeing this guy come back. I know there's been a couple. Yeah, look at these are really, really cool guys. And it's actually quite accurate too. We actually know that these guys had probably much longer back limbs than fours, so I think that looks about right, actually. So really, really cool. So yeah, I think this is a great place to end the video. So we've covered everyone. Thank you everyone for making these really, really awesome mods. So yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys will like and subscribe. Always look at the little bell icon to get notified about anything. So yeah, if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.